Hello! Welcome to Triggered Care. I'm Alex. Today I am making a video about my experiences with my own motherhood. So my experiences with getting pregnant, the reaction to that along with the pregnancy itself, and then into childbirth, and then the first couple years of my parenthood. Or me being a parent, pretty much. To start off, though, I got to give a little bit of history of my experience with childcare. I took care of my sisters when I was growing up. I very much replaced a lot of the motherhood things that my mother was supposed to do, but I was okay with doing that because I missed intimacy myself, and they really helped me foster a love with children and the interest of taking care of children. I've always loved it. It kind of makes me feel at home in a good way, taking care of kids. They're just so amazing. I love children conversations. I love having conversations with children. They are so intelligent and so innocent. It's really nice to be around that energy for me. So I was a nanny when I was 12, as well as having my little sisters to take care of. I was the first paying job I got. I took care of 3 boys, about 10 hours a day, 3 days a week. And then later on in life, I was a nanny for another lady with 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. And then I did a lot of babysitting jobs for my friends, and usually that varied from 3 kids to 5 kids, But I always really liked watching children. So for me, it was never a question of whether or not I wanted to be a mom, because ever since I was a teenager, pretty much I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to have a baby and love that baby. And I don't know how healthy it was, because I think part of that was I felt like I needed a baby to fix the hole in my heart. But I did know that I loved children, and not only that, children reciprocated the love with me, and we would always bond really well, and their behavior would improve, and their speaking skills would improve, because I enjoy comforting people, and I enjoy helping people get through thought processes, especially children. And so just having somebody to empathize with them, and then they empathize with me in a weird way, because I'm stuck at that young age when the trauma first hit. So learning that I was pregnant, I had a total of 3 pregnancies during my lifetime, and I have 1 child. 2 of my first pregnancies were miscarriages. The first miscarriage I had, I was not aware that I was pregnant. So I continued to drink. I continued to do drugs. This was my first year of college. And I was pretty unsafe with my sex life during that point. I took a number of Plan B pills throughout this, because I'm like, well, I'm not sure if, that would have gotten me knocked up. And so during that pregnancy, the actual pregnancy, I wasn't aware of it until, I always had an irregular period, but I was noticing weird hunger things. Like I would mix up weird foods together and just chow on that all day. And that was sort of out of character for me, since I was always kind of a skinnier lady who didn't eat too much. So I noticed that, and I did mention it to one of the people that I was sleeping with, like, hey, I think I might be pregnant, but I don't know, and like trying to repress it and push it off until I started bleeding. And I'm like, okay, well, this must be my period. I was freaking out over nothing, but then I kept bleeding. And I went to work that day, and I nearly died at work. It felt like I didn't, not in a literal sense, but I was bleeding so much, and I just going through a miscarriage and having it dawn on you, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like, I thought I was pregnant, but then I chose to ignore that thought until it came to this. Like, you feel stupid and you're drained. You're literally drained. I was constructing pads out of pads, like making a diaper for myself because a pad won't last more than 20 minutes with how fierce that blood flow was. But the fetus hadn't come out, so I was still, kind of in denial about it until a few weeks later when the fetus did come out separately on its own. That was a flashback. And that was really hard to see, and that was really hard to stomach, because it just came out while I was going to the bathroom, and that was like a brick hitting my face. So that was my first one. My second one, I was aware of the pregnancy. Me and my current husband, this was when we were dating, that we first got pregnant. And we found out that I was pregnant. Then we decided that we had to get married. We had been with each other for 9 months by that point, and we really liked each other. We loved each other, but we were still somewhat new in the relationship, but we kind of just jumped in full force, like, okay, well, if we're pregnant, we're getting married, I'm going on your insurance, I'm going to meet your parents for the first time, and all of this crazy stuff. And so we got married, and then me and him went to Puerto Rico for our honeymoon. And after we got back, I had an appointment the next week for my first ultrasound, because I was going to be about 6 to 8 weeks pregnant by that point. And the ultrasound lady, at that appointment, she was checking out my stomach with the ultrasound thing, and she's like, oh, we might have to do a vaginal one, because sometimes it can't pick up on the stomach one, the fetal heartbeat. And so I'm like, okay. So then she does the vaginal one, then doesn't say anything to me during the entire appointment, so I know that something's wrong. And then I go up to talk to the doctor about it, and this was the first time of me even meeting this doctor, because every other appointment they just had nurses talking to me and giving me books and brochures about how to eat, what prenatal stuff you need, and all of that. And he broke the news to me that the baby had passed. And I think what happened with that miscarriage is I quit smoking cigarettes immediately once I found out that I was pregnant. And I think the stress of that may have contributed to it. Because then with my next pregnancy, which happened 2 years later, I quit smoking gradually, and that I got a son out of that. So that might have been a contributing factor, but also 1 in 4 women will have a miscarriage, and they don't really know why. It's just something that happens. And so the third pregnancy, 2 years later, I was going to therapy by this point. I had kind of hit my rock bottom of I'm either going to kill myself or go get help for myself. My husband wanted a baby, and I wanted to wait because I was very afraid of all of it, considering I was just learning about my mental health. I was just diagnosed with PTSD. I kind of wanted to get that all under wraps before I got pregnant, but we were irresponsible with our form of birth control. For those entire 2 years, we were pretty irresponsible, but we lucked out and didn't get pregnant through that. And then I got pregnant because his mind shifted towards I want kids, and I knew that I wanted a kid. And so I kind of let him push me towards that, even though I was very nervous and very scared of trying to be a mom while trying to take care of my mental health. And so the moment that pops up the most for me is when I went to see my therapist, who I had been seeing for a couple months by this point, and this is after I got diagnosed, and in that spring. And I told her that I was pregnant, after I found out. And she goes, "Congratulations," because that's what you're supposed to say when, somebody gets pregnant. And then seeing her look of like happiness kind of fade into like puzzlement, because my face was not at all a happy face. And that's not because I wasn't happy that I was pregnant. It was like before I told anybody about it, it seemed more of a just unadulterated fear of, holy shit, I'm pregnant. I have to fix my life because I am a loser. I'm a fucking loser. And I can't be a loser mom. I can't be a fucking failure of a person and a mother. And so when she's like, "Oh, well, it's a good thing, right?" And then it dawned on me, yeah, it is a good thing. I've always wanted to be a mom. Like, I've always loved children. And not only that, children have always done really well around me. Like, I feel like I was made to be a mom, almost. But I'm also happy about that because I love children so freaking much. And so she kind of helped me move my perception away from the fear and more towards the hopeful. More towards, you're going to make your own family, and it's going to be the family that you want. You are not trapped into this box of abusive family patterns just because you have PTSD. You're going to learn how to manage your PTSD, and you're going to have the family that you want to have. And she really, really helped me out. And every time, and the time before that when I found out I was pregnant, it was the same thing. But I didn't have a therapist. All I had was my roommate during the day when I took the pregnancy test. And, I'm screaming at him, like, roommate, oh my God, I'm pregnant. And I just look at him, like, horrified, like, what the shit am I gonna do? But then later, I got married and we were really excited for the baby. It's just that first initial reaction, especially when you doubt yourself, especially when you hate yourself, is, I'm going to be a terrible mom. And what the fuck did I do? Why did I do this to this kid? And then learning how to shift that to, no, I can choose to be a good mom. And I know that I can take care of kids. So it's up to me to have the self-discipline and to have the motivation to get better. So that was my experience with finding out that I was pregnant. Now, the actual pregnancy was, well, they were different for each of the pregnancies, obviously, because some of them got farther along, and my knowledge of being pregnant will definitely change my experience with it. But I'm going to talk specifically about my pregnancy with my son, because that went full term. So the first trimester with my son, I was sick literally all the time, and water would give me heartburn and make me vomit. Like anything and everything would make me vomit. I was prescribed Zofran for my morning sickness, which now we know is not a good idea. But back then, they were prescribing that to everybody, all the pregnant ladies, for their morning sickness. And it did help a little bit keep food down, because that was the hardest part, was I was throwing up food literally 30 seconds to a minute after I was done eating it, because I'm a really fast eater. I eat sort of like an animal, and so I would scarf down my mac and cheese or whatever it was, which I love mac and cheese. So I would scarf down my mac and cheese, and then I'd be vomiting it up, pretty much whole noodled and still warm. And then it's like, oh, that tastes good again. Like, it wasn't even in my stomach long enough to not taste good. Sorry if that was too much information. Also, the first trimester, I was very, very terrified of another miscarriage. So I tried to take it very, very easily. I didn't do much lifting. I played games. I played a lot of video games and just had like a barf bag next to me. I tried to eat as much as I could. The doctor's like, yeah, whatever you can stomach, just eat that, pretty much. Because I'm like, well, I'm eating a lot of sweets and stuff like that. And they're like, well, that's okay. Just, whatever you can get in your stomach, try to get it in there. And it took me a while to tell people about it, like tell my mom about it and tell all those people about it. Just because I told everybody about it with the last pregnancy, and then you have to tell everybody that you miscarried. And I did not want to do that again. So I'm like, I'm not telling people till we start the second trimester. Obviously, I told friends and stuff because I couldn't drink anymore. And also, they noticed my barf bags everywhere. And so it's pretty obvious, like, oh, yeah, I'm pregnant. But as far as families were concerned and all of that, I kind of wanted to wait a bit in order to tell people, because I was really uncomfortable with just, I didn't want to jinx it. I didn't want to put too much expectation on this little baby, or on myself even, to have to handle telling people about another miscarriage. So that was my first trimester. My second trimester, the morning sickness, or in my case, all day sickness, pretty much ended, which was nice, and I was just hungry a lot more. This is when my hunger went into overdrive, and I gained a lot of weight. Along with that, my body physically started to widen out. My hips widened out. Something in my rib cage actually popped during this time from my ribs widening out, which was kind of weird, a little worrying when you're sitting in bed with your husband, all of a sudden you hear a big pop that comes from your rib cage. But so that was, and then lower back pain with the sciatic nerve, because my son loved to rest on my sciatic nerve. So I tried very hard to relieve that pain without much pain medication or anything like that, because I'm very paranoid when it comes to medications, which I should have been more with the Zofran, because that was the only thing I would take, but that's because I was trusting the doctors. But so I tried not to take any of the pain reliever stuff very often. And then also, a weird thing happened in the second trimester, which I think is unique to people with severe PTSD. And this is for me, because obviously my experience isn't going to talk about every PTSD pregnancy experience. But in my experience, during the second trimester, I felt overwhelming relief in my brain. The hallucinations were gone. The psychotic episodes were pretty much gone. I was able to focus. I was able to laugh. I was able to do a lot more normal or neurotypical things that normal people do versus what I'm like when I'm not pregnant. And I actually looked this up a while ago, so I don't remember what article I read about it, but some article I read a long time ago said that when you have a little baby inside of you and they're starting to get older and they're forming their own stem cells, what they do is they send stem cells to the mother's brain as well, and that will actually start repairing some of the damage. If you have brain damage, which I very much do have brain damage, and it actually lifted my mood all throughout the pregnancy. Well, not all throughout it. From the second trimester on in the pregnancy, I felt neurotypical in a good way. In a very good way, where I felt more grounded. I felt more euphoric, almost like I was on a drug that was allowing me to relax and allowing me to plan and allowing me to do the stuff that I want to do. And that is a very unique experience. That's a very unique feeling to go through. because it was literally like my son was fixing my brain. And I think that almost fostered more love. I mean, I'm already going to have a boatload of love for this kid, right? But just knowing that he is physically, even before he's out of me, he is trying to put his mama back together. Like, and that perfectly describes his personality today. Like, he is such a sweetie. He is so sweet and empathetic. It is crazy. It's crazy how much he loves children. It's crazy how much he empathizes with his peers and with his parents, and is amazing. So that really, really helped me out pregnancy wise, and mentally wise. And it also helped that my husband was very supportive. He gave me foot rubs all the time. And like I mentioned earlier, with this pregnancy, I gradually quit smoking cigarettes, but by the second trimester, I had quit, which was nice. And I did it in a certain way, and I didn't use patches or anything like that. I just cut down on my number of cigarettes every week or whatever until I got to 0, and that made it way easier. And then along with him sending those stem cells up to my brain also made quitting cigarettes a doable thing, because I wasn't having the hallucinations that I was trying to keep away with cigarettes. I wasn't having the mental anguish that kind of pushes me towards cigarettes. It's like that part of my brain was fixed for a little bit while I was pregnant with him. And then the third trimester, still hungry a lot, but I was a little bit more emotional, but it was silly emotional. It wasn't traumatic emotional. It was like I would be watching TV and a commercial with dogs and puppies and toilet paper would come on, and that would make me weep. That would make me have a complete mental breakdown. Like, those puppies are so cute. I cannot handle it. There was this YouTube video that I will link below for not fellow, because I'm not pregnant anymore, but any pregnant people who like to cry at the sweet things. There was this video of these quintuplet babies giggling around their mother, and I would watch that video and it would make me weep. Just all sorts of weeping of happiness. Like, everything made me extremely happy, and that would make me cry. It was pretty much my third trimester, which we were also moving into a new place because we were at an apartment building when I got pregnant, and then we moved in with a family member to save money pretty much and to start saving up to buy a house. And so during that move was during my third trimester. Like, we moved 2 months before the baby came. And that was rough on my husband, very much so, because he had to do all the heavy lifting. And then we're blessed to have a really good family friend of ours that came over, and he helped us out a lot too. And I did all the packing because that's what I could do during the day. Like, I could put stuff in boxes. I just couldn't move the boxes and all of that stuff. So that was a little bit stressful, just watching him do all the work and not being able to help him, because I very much want to help him move stuff and I don't want him to injure himself. But we had friends that helped, so we were very lucky with that. And then we moved into the house, and there was a stressful thing about my third trimester, I guess I should mention. When you are pregnant, I highly recommend you surround yourself with safe people. And if you come from an abusive family, family members are not safe people. The family member that we moved in with was with me, during the day while my husband went to work, while I was very, very pregnant. I was putting the crib together. I was getting the clothes put in the dresser and getting the nursery set up. And in order to do all of this, I had to clean out all the rooms in the house, and I had to sort everything and paint it because it had been untouched for a long time because this family member did not clean at all. So I had to do deep cleaning, painting, and all of this, right? And so during that time, I spent a lot of time with this family member, and I asked him, he's an older gentleman, and I asked him, you know, for if I do go into labor, I'm probably just going to call or text you about it first, given that my husband is at work. So then would you be able to drive me to the hospital? And I asked him this, a few months ahead of time, because you never are sure when it's going to pop up. And so he's like, yeah, of course. And then every single day after that, he would assume at random weird times during the day that I was in labor. And what I mean by weird times, like I'd be in my room napping. I'd be in my bedroom napping with the door closed, and he would burst into my room and say, "Oh, are you going into labor? Are you having the baby right now?" And I'd be groggy as poop going, "What are you talking about? I'm taking a nap." And he would say, "Well, it was so quiet, I thought maybe you were having the baby." And it's like, what in God's green earth are you talking about? What woman do you know who would start going into labor and just be like, "Oh, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I better not. I better not talk about the baby coming. I better keep it to myself and go lay down in my bed and just have it silently in my bed." Like, no woman would reasonably do that, but he did that every day pretty much until the baby actually came. Or I'd be sitting and watching TV, right? And then he'd come up into the kitchen and he would see me sitting and watching TV. And if I wasn't smiling, if I wasn't actively looking happy, he'd be, "What's wrong? Are you having the baby?" Bitch, does it look like I'm having a baby? No, I'm watching a television show, and I'm sorry, I don't just continually smile while I watch a television show. My face is going to have a neutral reaction on it unless something funny is going on or something makes me smile while I'm watching it. But most people, when they're watching a television show, aren't just continuously smiling. And also, you just assume any pregnant woman who's not smiling is going into labor? Like, that was crazy making, a little bit. So, okay, I'm going to split this video into two because I already have a lot for my first one. So this one is about pregnancy, learning about my experience with learning about being pregnant along with the pregnancy itself. And part two will pick up on my experience with going into labor along with the first year or two of my baby boy and what it's like being a mom. So, thank you for watching this. Part two should be out tomorrow. Have a good